Same old and game over.
Johnny. You're gonna need a bigger boat. So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the In Session Film Podcast.
Welcome to this podcast review for November 10th, 2025, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hello, everybody. I am very, very excited to get into this one. So, circling back to mid-January, we did our top 5 movies of, or our top 5 most anticipated movies, I should say, of 2025. Yeah. We actually talked about a full top 10, or revealed a full top 10 on the website.
Mm-hmm.
This was my number 5 most anticipated film of the entire year.
That's right, it was. I forgot it was that high. I forget where I had it. Wasn't in my top 10, but I know I definitely shared your enthusiasm for it.
Yes, I was very much looking forward to this for several reasons. One, it is written and directed by the great Lynne Ramsay. It is kind of astonishing that she only has a handful of films to her name.
5 features. I think that's only it.
5 features. It is unbelievable that she just has the 5. But I think they're all masterpieces. They're all really great. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but
most of them
I think they're all really, really great. Like, I had to be facetious because I want to emphasize that she's one of the best we have working today. And it is nothing short of a crime that she doesn't have 20 films to her name by now.
Well, in a way, I'm glad she's at least consistent and takes her time to maintain that consistency rather than, teeter back and forth between masterpiece and non-masterpiece by making too many movies.
That's true. A lot of directors are more than willing to make a mediocre movie in between just to work or to make money or whatever the case is.
And, for those of us who do, identify as cinephiles, we love the art house films just as much as anything that isn't an art house film.
Yes.
But when it comes to someone like Lynne Ramsay, who makes movies so sporadically, it almost makes it seem like an event for us film nerds. And that's always exciting.
It is a cinephilistic event for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you made that sound very fetishistic in a way.
And maybe it is because every single time she has a movie coming out, I am salivating. I am peeking around the curtain and anxious, eager to see what she has up her sleeve. And that is absolutely no different with Die My Love. Mm-hmm. So I was deeply excited for this just for that alone. Yeah. The film could have been about anything. It could have starred anyone in Hollywood. But the fact that it was Lynne Ramsay, that was enough for me. On top of that, though, it does star the great Jennifer Lawrence. And I might be against the grain here. I don't know. I think for a lot of critics and cinephiles, this is less of a hot take. But when you compare it to the general audience, who seemingly in the back half of the 2010s were feeling a certain way about Jennifer Lawrence, that maybe she was in the culture too much. I don't know. I mean, this is something that we've talked about a lot over the years. I do not understand the sentiment ever for any actress or actor. And maybe it's just because I'm not ingrained in pop culture in the same way that a lot of people are. Celebrity culture is not my thing at all. And so when it comes to Jennifer Lawrence, I didn't feel like I was seeing her too much. I didn't feel like I was being overwhelmed by J-Law.
She kind of took a bit of a break for a while too.
That's a big reason she took a bit of a break was one, people, or at least she felt like audiences were getting sick of her. Those are her words. And that, also coupled with she made some not well received movies. And so I think she wanted to take a break and reset herself, and come back at a later time. So she did take a little bit of a break, and I want her back in movies more generally. Like her run in the 2010s was fantastic. I love her personality. I think she's.
I think she's hilarious.
I love her bombacity. Like give me more Jennifer Lawrence. I don't want less J-Lo. I want more J-Lo.
Well, it's an actress like that, or like her rather. It makes sense that she'll be delivering performances like the one we're about to talk about, because she is not afraid to say what's on her mind. Like, she's a very fearless performer, but she's also a very fearless person. And I respect that about her.
And I do as well. So when she's making a movie and she's doing promotion for it, I tend to seek her out just because I love that fearlessness. She's so unpredictable, and that makes for a lot of fun for me. So like, I just find her infectious, but on camera, on screen, she's one of the best actresses we have working right now. So I just want her back in movies. And now you're telling me she's getting to work with the great Lynne Ramsay. That's like winning the lottery. Are you kidding me? And then on top of that, Robert Pattinson, the great Robert Pattinson, is also in this film. He's like third fiddle. And in most cases, he alone is enough to get me excited. And he's third fiddle here.
It is so unfortunate that there was a bit of a grassroots marketing campaign forming for this movie about how Edward Cullen and Katniss Everdeen are now forming a relationship together. No wonder this movie has scored a D+ cinema score. Because I'm sure a lot of people went into this movie rather, maybe weirdly expecting that. I mean, even Jennifer Lawrence, I think she was on Jimmy Fallon promoting it. Even she had to set the record straight because Jimmy Fallon himself was trying to make a joke out of it. She was like, no, let's stop talking about this. I don't want people going into this movie thinking that this is some tween romance movie. It's not what that is.
It's not that at all. Yeah. And that's the shit that she can't stand. That's what drove her away more than anything else, and why she thought people were feeling overwhelmed. It was that nonsense.
Yeah.
Fallon, get that crap out of here. God. I hate that. I do love the transparency that we're getting from a lot of actors today that are talking about how the interview circuit is just utter nonsense.
Oh gosh.
Just utter garbage. Because I don't need to get into that. We all know why it's terrible. It's terrible. The wrong people are interviewing these actors.
Absolutely. And sadly, that has now become emblematic of these talk show hosts as well.
Yes,
the ones
who should be a lot better.
The ones who should be the ones that ask the right questions.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Fallon is one of the worst and the most guilty of that crap.
I don't want to get down that rabbit hole, but he drives me nuts. He really does.
He's one of the worst interviewers I've ever seen on television. It's kind of remarkable. It's impressive how bad he is.
If we're talking about talk show hosts, I know this is a bit of a tangent, but I think the best one at conducting interviews is actually Seth Meyers.
Yeah, Seth Meyers is good.
He's really good.
Yeah.
He knows how to make it feel like a genuine conversation.
Yes. I like Colbert because of the intellectual element of it. There's a lot of fun to be had there. But Seth Meyers, just in terms of conversation and banter, he's one of the best as well.
And Conan was always one of the best too.
Absolutely. Lynne Ramsay, Jennifer Lawrence, yes, that is more than enough for me. Robert Pattinson is a great cherry on top. And then I find out that the wonderful Nick Nolte and Sissy Spacek are in this as well. So, good Lord. A lot to love here. A lot to be excited for. That's why this ends up at number 5 as far as my most anticipated of 2025 goes.
Did we know the full cast back at that point when you put it at number 5?
Think so. If I had known to that extent, it might have jumped a little higher on my list.
Oh, me too. Me too. That's why I say that, because I don't think this was in my top 10 at that time for most anticipated. But I think it's because we didn't know enough about it for me to feel concrete about how much I was looking forward to it. But if we knew this cast alongside Lynne Ramsay, then this is absolutely one to look out for us cinephiles.
Absolutely. So yes, with all of that said, Die My Love. It had its world premiere at the Cannes Film Festival back in May, and is now getting a fully wide theatrical release, and fully wide, it's still like what 1900 theaters, which is a lot for Mubi. That's by far
Yeah.
the biggest for Mubi. So I do want to give them credit. I only say
Yeah.
1900 and change because that's small comparatively to, let's say, like an Avatar
Right.
or a Predator Badlands. But for Mubi, that's really, really great. And I love that for them.
That's even more than how they distributed The Substance last year, wasn't it?
I'd have to go back and check, but perhaps. I mean, because I do think if Mubi released The Substance, assuming that you're correct there, I don't remember.
That may have been a partnership, but I know that they were definitely involved with that one.
But I did read that this was the widest release they've ever done. So yeah,
That's wild.
that
for
must
this
be
movie.
the case then.
For this movie, that is insane. Good for them.
But again, I think that just speaks to the greatness of Lynne Ramsay and the confidence they have in her, and two, the belief they have in Jennifer Lawrence to sell a movie. And I think they should, even though movie stars don't sell movies anymore, not like they used to.
Mhm.
But I think Robert Pattinson and Jennifer Lawrence still have a bit of a pull. And now they're together, which is great.
Yeah. Like I said, a grassroots campaign has already started for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. All right, let's get into this. Die, My Love. I guess we should also note that this is based on a 2012 novel, also titled Die, My Love, which I have not read. Have you
Same.
read the okay.
Nope, had not.
Okay. With that said, Die, My Love is directed by Lynne Ramsay. It stars, you'll never believe this, Jennifer Lawrence, Robert Pattinson, the aforementioned Sissy Spacek and Nick Nolte, as well as Lakeith Stanfield, and a few others that come and go throughout the film. If you're not familiar with Die, My Love, it is about Grace, a writer and young mother. She is slowly slipping into madness, locked away in an old house in and around Montana. We see her acting increasingly agitated and erratic, leaving her companion Jackson increasingly worried and helpless. I guess just to bring clarity, I think it's obvious enough, but to bring clarity, Grace being Lawrence, Jackson being the Pattinson character in that relationship. Brendan, what did you think about Die, My Love?
Lynne Ramsay here. Watching a movie like Darren Aronofsky's Mother and saying, "Hold my beer."
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people have made that comparison. I obviously cannot take ownership in that. I think it is a pretty apt comparison, not just because of the motherly themes that I'm sure we'll talk about, but I think it's also in keeping with just how dangerous Lynne Ramsay's films feel sometimes. You often feel like you're watching something you should not be seeing. And what I love so much about her is that she makes movies and tackles them in such a provocative way. This must have been what it was like to see like the new wave of American filmmakers in the 1970s. And it's no coincidence that one of the executive producers who brought this movie to life was Martin Scorsese. I think it was him that that found this source material. I think suggested it for Jennifer Lawrence to play it, and then ended up
true. That's right.
Yeah. And there's a lot of Scorsese in Lynne Ramsay's films. I mean, even in some ways you were never really here, kind of has a Taxi Driver like vibe at times.
Yeah, sure.
Clearly that's an influence on her. And I think that's what makes her movies so visceral, so hard to watch. I feel like I could say the same thing about every one of her movies. I sometimes hate the experience, and I come out of the movie thinking I absolutely loved every second of that. And that's more or less how I feel about Die, My Love. I love this film. I love this. I didn't always love watching it, but I know that that is ultimately the point. It is designed to make you as uncomfortable as possible. It's not the most subtle film of hers. I think it is pretty direct in some of its themes that I'm sure we'll talk about, but I love that it's trying to really dive into very taboo subjects of familiar themes, and that's what makes her so interesting to me.
Yep.
In many ways, this is a movie about those unspoken truths of what it means in this case to be a mother, and what that ultimately means for what you're giving up, and how it almost makes it feel like a part of you has literally died. And sometimes the worst thing you could say in that moment is, I regret being a mom, which is maybe what some people might think, but they don't feel like they can admit that because that would make them the worst person on earth, right? And this is a movie that's tackling that kind of taboo mentality. And I love how it's willing to go there and be very dangerous with that, on top of the fact that it is just so well made. I tweeted this earlier that if there is surprisingly one film from this year I think you need to see on the big screen, if you're willing to stomach a Lynne Ramsay film, it is
Yeah.
this one, because there are two moments involving glass shattering, I'll simply say, that rank among the greatest jump scares I've ever seen in a movie. That might sound
Yeah.
hyperbolic, but I think that is genuine for me, at least. I
Mhm.
was like, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up so high, I thought I was levitating out of the theater.
Mhm.
I cannot believe how effective that was. That to call this
Yeah.
a horror movie, I think, is kind of apt. So I love this thing. I will not recommend it to pretty much anybody in my life, but I love what Lynne Ramsay is absolutely going for.
Yeah, sometimes you're really looking forward to a film. It might make your top 5 most anticipated films of the year, and it doesn't always live up to that expectation or that excitement. A Big Bold Beautiful Journey, for example, my number 2. Love Kogonada still, and I've
Mhm.
probably defended that film more than most, but admittedly,
Same,
it didn't
same.
really live up to being my number 2 most anticipated film of the year. Sometimes, however, it exceeds your most anticipated ranking, and that is absolutely the case for Die My Love. It gave full credence to that being on my list. And what I said earlier, that Lynne Ramsay is just one of the best working right now, because I am with you. I adored this movie. Absolutely loved it. This is Lynne Ramsay's raw and unrestrained examination of postpartum depression and the deeply visceral polarity of love and desire teetering with emptiness and isolation. Obviously, I have no firsthand experience, but I have seen postpartum depression up close, and it is heartbreaking to see. From an
Mhm.
outsider's perspective, you're watching someone you love become a different person entirely. I can't even fathom what it's like to actually go through it. I've heard it described as a fever dream, and I think Ramsey
Mhm.
captures that quite vividly. To see Grace slowly lose all sense of self as her reality begins to crumble is incredibly poignant. But it's not just the depression that sets in. The other key element here is the abandonment of Grace's love and desires.
Yeah.
Depression might make our loved ones seem unrecognizable, as I noted, and I think it's understandable that Jackson may be caught off guard initially, although it's probably something you have to be somewhat aware of. But
Yeah.
where he fails is his inability to meet Grace's love and desires.
Mhm.
And it's not as if Grace was subtle about it. She made it quite clear that she needed some attention, that she wanted to be close to him, and he just shuts her off and acts as if the lack of intimacy is the result of him working, or perhaps the baby, or worse, that it's just Grace's own fault. And I think that's really what this film wants to emphasize the most,
Yeah.
the connection between a woman's postpartum depression and the devastating consequences that arise when she's abandoned because of a failure to recognize it. An idea that is anchored by a stunning Jennifer Lawrence. I don't care where award season goes. Hopefully,
Mhm.
she's a big player, but she gives undoubtedly one of the best of the year. And I think
Yeah.
what's brilliant about it is the tonal, sleight of hand in the sense that at times she's bombastic and untethered, but equally there's a lot of soft, quiet moments that relish in subtlety and emotional introspection. And I think she nails that balance. I don't think that's being talked about enough because, again, the marketing especially wants to highlight the capital A acting and her performance. But I'd say that's actually a small slice, a small sliver.
That's 5% of the movie.
That's 5% of the movie. Most of what she's doing here is in the realm of subtlety. And
Yeah.
I really, really love what she does. And Lynne Ramsay's direction, I'm sure we'll talk about it more as we go, but staggering as always.
Well, even some of the moments that might not seem subtle from Jennifer Lawrence here come with an ounce of subtlety to support it. I think of like the grocery store scene where she basically yells at the grocery store cashier, right? And it's actually kind of a funny scene. It's very loud in a way, but it also somehow tries to make you think about what is causing that type of reaction. What's the underlying reason for it, as opposed to just the superficial thrill of it. And I think that's what I like so much about this movie. As direct as it might be, it simultaneously doesn't literalize that directness. It doesn't tell you what that directness is. It's all based on like hidden gestures and things that are implied as opposed to told to us. The movie doesn't have a linear structure to it. It doesn't come out and say how the arcs of these characters lead them to a certain point, or even what is essentially causing this kind of animalistic behavior out of both Jackson and Grace here. It seems to maybe suggest that much of their relationship, at least early on, was purely based on their sexual desires for each other. But when they were now forced to find a connection beyond just the sexual desire, that's where things get complicated. But the movie doesn't come out and say that that's what's going on. In fact, it could be more than just that. It could be another interpretation there. And I think that's what makes the movie so strong, is that it seems very direct and on the nose. And there's a lot more going on. Lynne Ramsay is very good at shocking you with what's on the screen and then making you think about everything below it. And Jennifer Lawrence's performance, I think, is very well balanced for the reasons you talked about. I think she knows how to straddle that line perfectly, even if it might seem like she's not. But I think she absolutely does.
No, I completely agree. There's something really fascinating with this film in regards to parenthood and some of what that day-to-day looks like, and the psychological disassociation that can take place, especially when you're going through postpartum depression. But the film is certainly much more than that. I think to help articulate that a little bit further, I did want to bring into the conversation great friend of the show, and I have to keep invoking her because her writing is absolutely terrific. But from Off Screen Central, I'm going to bring Kenzie into the conversation once again because, one, she's gone through postpartum depression. She's openly talked about this. I highly recommend you going to check out her review. But I want to read this excerpt because I think it highlights beautifully what this film is really going for at its core, and it correlates to what you were talking about there, where she says, quote, "The film focuses on the brutal feelings that overtake your body after giving birth. Your body is no longer your own, and while you can attempt to plan, nothing truly prepares you for how it feels to lose your body and your mind to this life you created. We live through the feelings all through Jennifer Lawrence's life-altering performance as Grace, her highs and lows, through manic arguments spurred on by neglect to pure elation leading to consuming, often feral, sex. The film brilliantly tackles the concept of proving you exist by destroying yourself. It's entirely out of your control, despite everyone around you telling you how it will pass after a certain amount of time. You'll adjust, motherhood gets easier." End quote. I leave it there. Again, there's much more to her argument and to the review. I highly encourage everyone to go and check it
I
out.
yeah, I think
But
her review is the best and most important review I've seen for this movie right now.
yes,
I really do. I cannot wait to see more pieces written about this from the female perspective about what it means to be a mother. I
yeah,
cannot wait to see more of those.
I agree. Getting back to that section of Kenzie's argument, though, I do think that articulates beautifully the film's emotional volatility and the
Hmm.
overwhelming sensation that can arise in a postpartum state. Grace is absolutely living outside of herself, and everyone just expects her to accept that, which leads to
Hmm.
her disassociating even further. And it's really heartbreaking to see, especially given where the film leads and how part of herself fades.
Yeah.
Again, there's almost a literalization of it, as you mentioned earlier,
Hmm.
and the raw and untethered way that Lynne Ramsay shows that it is deeply poignant.
Yeah, and it's why the movie feels kind of fever dream like it almost you often question what is real and what isn't because it's meant to mirror that headspace of a female going through that. And I think Lynn Ramsey tackles that very well. And for what I understand, Lynn Ramsey herself, I think she has one daughter, right? I think she has a daughter. I don't know if she has any more kids. So perhaps she's also speaking from personal experience. I'd love to find some interviews with Lynn to see if she talks
Mhm.
about that directly. But I kind of feel like that may have to be the case because, in a way, this does also work as kind of a companion of sorts to We Need to Talk About Kevin, just in very different ways.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think both of them work alongside each other, not just given what Kenzie was talking about there, but also what it must feel like for a mother to have to openly admit that they have regrets about what they have chosen to do as a mother and the fact that they have chosen to become a mother in the first place. Like I said, that's kind of a taboo thing to admit, right? That would make you seem like a terrible person. And in some ways, it seems as though Grace is kind of reckoning with that idea, much like Tilda Swinton's character was in We
Mhm.
Need to Talk About Kevin, given the regret she had for how she raised him and how she ultimately failed her son. Right? There's a perspective there that I think is
Mhm.
very uncomfortable, very harrowing to think about. And I really cannot wait to see what other pieces are going to say about this movie from that female
Mhm.
perspective. I think Kenzie's piece is beautiful. I
It's
loved
gorgeous.
reading
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, it's terrific. And what you're alluding to there, I think, is perhaps what's most important about this film for me is
Hmm.
how it confronts the idea of maternal fulfillment
Hmm.
and demonstrating how becoming a mother can be devastating as it is rewarding. Because my experience being a father has been incredibly privileged
Yeah.
comparatively. And because of my personality, I'd say it's the nucleus of my identity. But
Hmm.
again, I say that very selfishly, as I've never had to grapple with the turmoil that Grace and many other women do, as we see here. Motherhood
Yeah.
isn't easily attainable for Grace. Instead, it's amplified much of her isolation and
Hmm.
loneliness and this loss of identity. It's this collision between devotion and resentment where her love for her child is forced to coexist with this newfound emotional suffocation, which a big part of that is Jackson's ignorance, but it's
Sure.
also the other mothers and family members who are constantly pressing that she'll get better after the first year, which
Hmm.
isn't comforting to Grace at all.
That does not help at all. That must make you feel so much worse, honestly.
Absolutely. However, what's interesting to note in the middle of that, and I believe Kenzie notes this as well in her review, the film never expresses indignation or anger at the child.
Right.
Grace's
Right.
isolation and depression is her body coping with this life altering event and Jackson's inability to recognize her love and desires and the lack of attention that she was needing. And I think that's an important distinction because it suggests that Grace could have been a great mother who did find maternal fulfillment, but she's also a person who has a need for adult activities and adult conversation. Again, how many times in this film do we see her attempt to seduce Jackson? There's also a scene where she walks with the baby to Pam's house to have a conversation with her.
Yeah.
Again, I think what's great about film and how it offers up different perspectives other than my own, that is really fascinating here because obviously, as I noted earlier, I'll never experience motherhood or postpartum depression. And this film tapping into what that feels like is one thing, but I also appreciate how this film utilizes that to wrestle with what motherhood is for Grace, which on its own terms is just very different from my experience. So it really has me wrestling with this film in some powerful ways with a perspective that I would otherwise never get to experience. And again, even though I've seen it up close, I still like that's the closest I'll get to it. That's still not the same thing as
living it,
going through it, as living it,
seeing it and living it, very different things. And I was thinking a lot about battling perspectives when it came to this movie. In the theater, I was even thinking about that. Some who maybe don't have the experience of what it means to become a mother might watch this movie and think, oh, this is just overly heightened. It's almost fantastical. Where those who might be able to relate will say, oh, this movie actually doesn't go hard enough. and I think that's actually really interesting for a movie that does feel very loud and, dare I say, sometimes obnoxious. For some might feel like it's still tame by comparison. I think that's a really interesting notion. And I was even thinking about it with regard to some of these bit characters that very brazenly tell Grace, oh, you just have to get through the first year. And most of the people who say this to her are also other mothers, right?
Yes.
It made me think, are they also just lying through their teeth? What are their stories? Are they just trying to save face? And is their story the same as Grace's? And they just don't want to reveal that. Like, in a way, Lynne Ramsay, and I don't know if this was intentional, I feel like she's trying to call attention to the fact that these other women are maybe hiding something, like they have more to share than they're willing to. It's because, in a way, the way that they behave, it almost kind of has like a Stepford Wives like energy to it, like they're masking something very crucial. And again, I don't know if that was intentional. That could just be my reading of it. But I think this is a movie that's really meant to encompass the perspective of how many women can actually relate to this, and it's not just Grace's story. And I actually think that's a very powerful thing. That even despite the loudness of this movie, there's still a female universality to it as well.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about that, and maybe what's bleak, is that in order for you to get to that point where everything gets better, that you do have to lose a part of yourself. That could be part of Pam's story. That could be the story for a lot of moms, that eventually you do get to a place where you find some peace and maternal fulfillment. But in order to get there, you have to sacrifice a part of yourself. Again, going back to some of the visual symbolism we see at the very end of the film. And that in and of itself is kind of heartbreaking, especially when you funnel it through the lens of the isolation and the abandonment that Grace feels here. And because it's not a choice. It's one thing if you get to choose it.
Yeah.
And again, going back to my story, funneling the depression side of this for a second, just putting that to an aside. When you become a parent, you have to choose. You can't choose yourself and the kid. It's kind of one or the other. Now we do our very best to balance that out. Thankfully still get to do this podcast. I get to play hockey from time to time, but most of my week is dedicated to my kids, and I make a lot of sacrifices. I don't get to play as much hockey as I want. I don't get to do a lot of the things I would love to do. I don't get to see as many movies as a lot of you do.
Yeah.
I am limited, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. And it's a sacrifice I get to choose.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case for Grace. And it's probably not the case for a lot of mothers. They don't necessarily get that choice. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
And I think
how
the film is wanting to highlight that it's like something has been stolen for her. And that's why she disassociates when people offer up what they think are these gestures of kindness or these sayings of comfort, but really all it's doing is pushing Grace further down these uncomfortable paths.
And how that must feel for a woman like Grace, who has a partner that just isn't as sympathetic as he should be to her dilemma.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah.
And what I love about the movie too is that it's not condemning the Jackson character at all. In a way, his ignorance is really the problem. But you definitely get a sense in Robert Pattinson's performance that Jackson is slowly beginning to recognize that problem in himself, and that he wasn't sympathetic to what she had to give up in order to be a mother. I know that they're both artists. She's a writer and he's a musician. So when he's out working, isn't he out like doing some like tour or something like that? Which it never really establishes that. It never really tells us what his actual work is. But he does talk about being a musician. I know that the movie is predicated on them being artists. So it's very much a movie that's sort of flipping the script of what it means for artists to go on their artist retreat, if you will. This is very much the evil twin version of that kind of story. But I do like how the movie doesn't let Jackson off the hook, but it also doesn't recognize him either. I appreciate that there's a recognition of his ignorance and what she has needed to give up, and he needs to come to terms with that too.
Yeah, see, that's interesting. I don't know if I fully share that duality, but I am very much wrestling with this film still, as I mentioned earlier. I don't know if condemning is the appropriate word here, but I don't think that Jackson is a saint by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, I agree with that.
I do think the film is wanting to highlight a lot of his faults, and his ignorance is a key driver in Grace's mental deterioration that we see here. And again, going back to that idea of his failures to recognize that she needs his love and attention. And it's not as if she was hiding it. There were several brazen attempts to create
ask
some
for
intimacy.
I get that. Yeah.
And of course, he doesn't meet her in any of that, which just shoves her further down this path of deterioration. So I don't know if the film condemns him, but I think it's more that than it's some sort of equilibrium.
The reason why I bring it up in that way, well, mostly because I think by the final act, Jackson does have a revelation that he was ultimately not there for her when she needed it. And
that's fair.
Yeah. I guess the reason why I bring it up too is because it could be easy to misconstrue this movie as purely a shitty husband movie, and it's certainly not that. Like what he kind of reminded me of here, the Jackson character sort of reminded me of the Jack Raynor character from Ari Aster's Midsommar, which you could easily see as a crappy boyfriend movie, but there's a lot more going on that kind of makes you understand why he might be a crappy boyfriend. You kind of pity him simultaneously. Like I was getting some similar nuances, if you will, with Jackson in this movie. That ignorance is really the thing that is his undoing, and maybe their marriage is undoing as well. But the tragedy is that he seems to realize that, and you definitely get a sense that he is also regretful of that, and tries to own up to it, but sometimes it just becomes too late.
It's too late. Yeah. And I think that's what the film wants to highlight, maybe more than anything else with Jackson. are the consequences that come about when you fail to recognize the desperate attempts from your partner, especially when they are going through something like postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And the importance in seeing that. And again, going back to my opening statements, and this might correlate to other types of depression. Admittedly, I don't have much real world experience with them, so forgive my own ignorance here for anyone listening out there. But with postpartum depression, again, with my own experience, it's quite jarring because you see someone that you love turn into a completely different person. And that's why I wanted to note in my opening thoughts, I think it's understandable that Jackson, at least initially, is caught off guard.
Yeah.
Why is Grace reacting this way? Why is she acting in this way that I don't recognize? Like that element is, perhaps has some empathy behind it, but the constant failure to recognize that she is struggling and that she needs some help, that I think is somewhat of the warning that the film wants to highlight, is that at a certain point you have to recognize that there's something wrong here. You have to give them
You have to
that
pay
love
attention.
and you have to pay attention. Absolutely. You just can't keep pushing it away or making excuses or again, even worse, turning it on the person who is struggling, which I do think Jackson does in this film. He kind of has all three of those phases.
Kind of does,
before,
yeah. There's
in
definitely
the
an
end,
arc there.
recognizing that there's a major problem here. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely a distance growing between them, both romantically and sexually, which is why Grace has these biker fantasies, if you will. I think that's maybe the one aspect of the movie that is a manifestation than something literal.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that, but I had the same read as you.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to the very direct confrontation she and Lakeith Stanfield's character of the biker have later on in the movie, where you can it's clearly edited in a way that seems to suggest this is someone she saw, simply thought was attractive, and manifested this newly found desire out of it because she currently lacks that in her own marriage.
And the film establishes the isolation of their home in Montana. She's at home all day with nothing to do except to take care of the baby. And that's why I go back to that part of the conversation we had here as far as confronting the idea of maternal fulfillment. It's one thing when you're around your child all day long and that's the language you speak and that's the relationship that you form. And obviously that's important, but as a human being, you do at a certain point salivate for friendship, for conversation that doesn't have to do with kids. To want to participate in something else that isn't watching Blippi on the television or on the phone or iPad or whatever your device may be.
I don't know. If kids are watching Bluey or something like that all the time, I think
Bluey's
I'll take
great.
it, because I even watch
Bluey
Bluey
rules.
without kids around. So.
So look, I love all of that, and I would hang out with Andrew all day long, but at a certain point you do want to have other parts of your life, and you do want to have adult conversation. You want to participate in adult things, and that it clearly the way Lynne Ramsay, and that's what I love about the methodical storytelling here and the slow burn of it all, because how many times did we see Grace slowly rotting away at that home during the day with nothing to do except taking care of the baby? So of course she's going to, at a certain point, start to fantasize about escaping that reality, especially with Jackson either being gone or even when he is around, as we noted a moment ago, isn't giving her the love and attention that she is desperately wanting. He's just completely ignoring that part of herself, and it is starting to rot away. And that element of the film is quite intoxicating here.
Yeah, and no disrespect to some mothers out there that maybe their version of fulfillment nowadays is simply taking care of their kids. And some do love that, but at the same time, I think this movie is still arguing that you need some type of adult camaraderie in some way to balance the psychology you bring to one life versus your home life, because that ultimately makes you a better parent and more present for your kids in the right way. I mean, we talk about us being very passionate about certain things, you being very passionate about this film podcast, getting to play hockey. And seeing your kids respond to that passion of yours is what inspires passion in them. So it actually helps them, right? So in a way, those adulting things allow you to still be there for your kids in a more indirect way. And I do think that is very important. I really do. And this film is very much aware of that by making this isolated rural town very much a character. It's kind of interesting. We just got off the heels talking about Joachim Trier's sentimental value and how the house in that movie is kind of the main character. This is almost the same thing. Like the house is kind of a character here.
And again, that's why I go back to that moment when Grace simply grabs the kid and walks to Pam's house. That wasn't something she needed to do. She did it just to have a conversation with somebody, just to have some sort of connection. And it's also part of the conflict that she has with Jackson. Not only does he fail to recognize her desires, even though she is brazenly trying to seduce him at times, but he is away. He gets to work or indulge in his art, whatever it is that he's doing, but he's not at home all day long with the kid. He does get to serve both parts of himself. He gets to come home and be with his wife and kid, and he gets to do that, but he also gets to be away for a while.
Yeah.
And as a result, he doesn't understand Grace's disconnect there. And perhaps, and I don't know if the film does a good job of this. I don't think it needed to necessarily, but there's perhaps an element of Jackson also assuming that, like that role of motherhood should be sufficient. Like her getting to be at home all day long, like that's what she should be doing, or that should be enough. I do think they have a bit of an argument about that. So maybe the film actually does tap into that.
I think so.
I think that is some of the conflict there.
Like, I think he's kind of bringing a more old-fashioned mentality into their relationship. I think the movie is aware of that. I feel like that was maybe one of the arguments they sort of indirectly hinted at, that the fight that they have in the truck when they just drive off and have this fight. I feel like that might be one of their talking points, but it does seem as though Jackson is coming at this relationship like he's kind of stuck in the past a little bit, kind of assuming what the role should ultimately be.
Yeah. That's why I think, like, one of the more striking scenes of the film to me, and maybe this is indicative of what I said earlier in terms of, I don't know if the film is condemning Jackson, but maybe, and that's the pool scene when they go to a friend's house. And again, off the heels of what we just talked about with Grace needing to get away, and they do get away, but her mental health at this point has really taken the plunge, perhaps pun intended. And they go to this party. She takes off her clothes with kids around and everything, jumps into the pool, and everyone's like, what the heck? And so on the way home, he berates her. You embarrassed me.
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
Like, again, like, and this is after she's tried to seduce him multiple times. They've argued. There has been conflict where she's tried to articulate that he is not, giving into that, like, he's not meeting in the middle in that relationship.
Yeah.
It's been a one-sided affair,
listening,
so to speak. He's not listening. And so on the way home, it's, you embarrassed me. You, like, what are you doing? Like, his failure to just recognize anything is quite startling. And again, that's where I think the film, if it's embellishing anything, it might be a little bit of that, because it wants to highlight the importance of that recognition, and that
Yeah.
as a partner, you have to be aware that, hey, like, if this person is deteriorating and you're not recognizing it, that's a big problem.
I mean, they're clearly not a good match. I think the movie is aware of that. It just takes some time for both parties to recognize that they weren't a good match. And you feel bad for them. You do.
Or I mean, they could be a good match. I mean, and that's what I love about the opening scenes of the film, is that there's clearly a chemistry there. But that's why I go back to the failures to recognize the deterioration, because to me, that's what it comes down to more than anything else. To me, it wasn't a compatibility thing as much as it was Jackson just failed her quite measurably.
Well, and I think by that point, the compatibility has failed, because as we talked about earlier, when you recognize the issue, you try to do something to correct it, but sometimes it's just too late. And we often talk about here that, when you have a child, there's often something you have to give up. There's a metaphorical death of sorts. And sometimes that comes in the form of a relationship. Sometimes a relationship is maybe better served for a child when the two parents aren't together as much, because the damage has already been done. And I kind of wonder if maybe that's what happens for this couple by the end. The ending is left ambiguous, and I think it's purposely ambiguous, but it is definitely taken as a symbolic gesture of what that means to give something up, to let something in your life die to give birth to something else. We're just not fully aware of what that thing fully is by the end, for what these lives are going to be going forward. But it is possible that that could be their final outcome, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think maybe why I still maintain the compatibility element of the relationship is that even as Grace is, struggling with her despair, Lynne Ramsay is intentional about showing us these great moments of chemistry or domesticity that is maybe optimistic. So, for example, there's this great moment. It's a little funny, but given the context of it, very much less so. It's heartbreaking simultaneously. But there's this moment when Grace goes into the bathroom, and maybe I should back up, because this is a moment where she tries to seduce Jackson, and he brushes her off. And so she goes upstairs into the bathroom and just utterly destroys everything. And she's just squeezing out all the bottles, all the soap bottles, the shampoo bottles, everything, all over the floor. Yeah. She even tries to destroy the sink. And she's laying there in the bathroom, and Jackson comes up, knocks on the door, needs to come in because he's got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And
specifically, he's got to take a poop.
He's got, yes. And there's this fleeting but funny moment between the two of them where they joke about that, where he's like, I'm not going to go shit in the woods. And she laughs and he laughs, and it's this cordial moment. And he walks in to the bathroom after she unlocks the door for him. He goes in and he's just like, what the hell? But it doesn't turn into another argument. It's just this funny moment between them.
There's a volatility there. It definitely teeters back and forth.
Yes.
Their relationship does.
Or I think about that moment where she comes out of the hospital and they're driving down the road, and there's just this sequence of seemingly marital bliss, that everything is starting to work itself out. And at that point, you're getting toward the end of the movie. And I don't know how you felt, but I was absolutely waiting for the shoe to drop, because this is Lynne Ramsay after all.
Yeah.
and it's operating a little too optimistically for me, a little too hopeful. What is going to happen? But I do love that again. She teases that despite the conflict, despite the rage and the despair and the isolation, there is still a chemistry. There is still a compatibility between them, but in the intercut in all of that is, these issues that seemingly won't go away. And then you get that final shot at the end of the film, and depending on how you want to interpret that, maybe that's Grace just killing a part of herself, killing a whole of herself, becoming a completely new person. Maybe she is reborn after that moment. I don't know.
I can see people walking out of this saying this is a breakup movie, and
it could be all of that.
Yeah, because I think one of the things that this movie is toying with is the what if scenario of this relationship, this marriage. What would have happened if a child wasn't even involved? Could this marriage have worked? And it's a scary thought. Again, it's kind of a taboo subject, right? There are a lot of things that this movie is tackling that many of us don't want to talk about because it would make us terrible people to openly admit something like, I don't know, and I'm just speaking hypothetically. This is not my story, obviously, but some people might actually openly think to themselves, my marriage failed because we had kids. And that is potentially the story for some people. It's a sad thing.
I imagine that's how some people feel. And look, there's also a physical element of this in the sense that the postpartum depression sets in because she has the child.
Yeah.
So that is an element of it. If she never had the child, maybe depression sets in a different way. I don't know. That's always possible. Again, that's certainly not my forte, so I don't want to get too much into that.
Yeah, we can't get technical there.
To your point about the what if of it all, maybe the relationship blossoms based off of what we see at the beginning of the film, and it maintains that sexual synergy and that romanticism that is quite evident there in those opening scenes. Maybe that is the case. Maybe not having the child, it gives you more space to sleep and to maintain a cogent mind. That's all part of it. When you have a kid, it's much more challenging.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Much more challenging, and that's without experiencing the postpartum depression that Grace does. I mean, I can't, again, that's why I can't even fathom. That's why I appreciate movies like this that offer up a perspective that I would otherwise never get to experience.
Yeah. And even those who do experience are sometimes afraid to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that this film is willing to have that conversation, that it really wants to delve into those tough areas and have those hard conversations.
It's a brave movie.
Yeah,
whether you like it or not, it's a brave film.
Yeah, and the thing, when it comes to the child aspect of it, and again, I say this very complimentary, when it comes to being a mother for Grace and others that have similar experiences or that might feel the same as Grace, as it relates to maternal fulfillment, maybe that's something that she never comes to feel. I don't know. A lot of it, I think, depends on how you interpret that final scene. And again, like, I appreciate that the film is wanting to invoke those challenges because that is very different from how I look at it. But
sure,
I love how this film wants to confront those challenges. And, because I think there is a lot of empathy to be had with Grace and what she experiences here. And I very much did feel it, especially because of Jennifer Lawrence's performance. But also maybe she comes out on the other side, again, depending on how you interpret that final sequence, and she does have fulfillment. Because the way Grace treats the child throughout, she does love that kid.
Oh
seemingly.
yeah,
She
there's
treats it.
never resentment. There's never any
Yeah.
resentment.
She's
toward
actually not a bad mother. She takes care of the kid, other than there's one moment where she abandons the child, but that was not her fault at all. That's Jackson again
that's
being
Jackson's fault. Yeah.
extremely obtuse.
Yeah.
Like that was
Yeah.
really, really dumb.
That was also bad.
That was also bad. So again, Jackson not put into a great light here. And I love the joke when they get back and she yells at him from the window there. Darkly funny little moment there. But Grace is a good mother, actually. So
Yeah.
when it comes to motherhood just in a vacuum, it's not as if, despite the depression, despite the psychosis and feeling overwhelmed and disassociated, she doesn't treat that child from a place of anger or indignation or anything.
Yeah.
Like it just really makes you wonder that if Jackson saw the signs, that if he just engaged with her romantically and, just took care of her the way that she needed to, could all of this have gone very differently?
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I
Makes you
just
wonder.
like those questions I think are really great here.
I love movies that I guess I now have to dub "It makes you wonder" kind of movie. And this one definitely does.
Yeah.
This is great. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot to love here. I was a big fan either. I know we've talked a lot about Jackson the character, but did you have any thoughts on Pattinson the performer?
Oh, I think he's very good. And like I said, his performance is maybe the reason why I said earlier that the film doesn't necessarily villainize him like it could have. I think there is very much a recognition in Jackson by the end that he was distant and he was too distant.
Yeah.
And he does seem genuinely regretful of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's in his performance. I think his performance really does add that necessary nuance that even complicates this relationship further.
Yeah. I think the brilliance of Pattinson here is that he just gets out of the way.
That's also true. Yeah.
I don't think he's remarkable here, and I think that's purposeful.
Oh yeah,
Like,
he's not asked to. He's not required
Yeah,
to.
he's not required to. I think he gives a fine performance, and I think that's all the film. That's all Lynne Ramsay is asking for him. This is the Jennifer Lawrence show, and she is mesmerizing here. Really, really great. And again, to emphasize something we said earlier, the loud, crazy, marketable moments, which is so irritating because when it comes to the Oscars,
That's
it's
what they'll
going to
advertise.
be
Yeah.
it's going to be the bathroom scene when she's destroying everything. And it's going to focus on the capital A acting of that moment, and it's going to drive me crazy.
I hope it's the scene where she just simply strips her clothes off and jumps into a pool full of kids and doesn't say a word.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to go that far, but
Of course they're not, but it'd be funny.
but that's going to drive me nuts because that's such a small part of the performance. Most of this is ruminative, it's introspective, it's quiet, it's tender, it's emotional. And that to me is what makes it great. And Jennifer Lawrence more than delivers there. Sissy Spacek and Nick Nolte, similarly like Pattinson,
Yeah.
I think they do a great job when they're called upon, but do a great job of still kind of getting out of the way.
Yeah, but they do add a level of sweetness to this movie
do.
that it
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
needs. Like I think it helps kind of tonally balance the movie out a bit.
Yeah, and Spacek is really great at tapping that line or tiptoeing that line, of being cordial and empathetic and understanding, but at the same time pressing a little bit. It's going to be okay. Once you get past this first year, it's okay. There's something wrong with her. There's that moment she has with Jackson late at night where she's like, there's something wrong. We got to figure out what's going on here. So like, as much as she's understanding, she's also pressing a little bit. And I think Spacek does a great job of teetering.
She's very motherly.
Yeah. Nolte only has 2 scenes here, really, but they're very Nick Nolte, and I love that.
I was gonna say that it seems very much in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
good.
What did you think of what's his name? Seamus McGarvey, I believe, is the cinematographer here. What did you think of some of the choices with regard to the cinematography? Because there's a very particular, I guess it's the 4:3 aspect ratio, so it feels very boxed in. It's basically just a miniature square, which is a very interesting choice given that this movie takes place in a rural area that's all about the vastness and open space, and yet everything feels so claustrophobic.
Well,
Pretty much,
that's exactly what I was going to say. You know, it certainly emphasizes the claustrophobia and the closed in isolation and feeling that Grace was experiencing. For
I feel
sure.
like that's always the case, right? Every time we see a movie that has that particular aspect ratio, it's because it's meant to be claustrophobic. I feel like that's always the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Do love the cinematography from that perspective. And something you mentioned earlier, Tony Froschhammer's editing here is really good.
Oh yeah,
Really,
it's
really good.
it's fragmented in a way that doesn't really seem fragmented, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes you question the validity of what you're watching at times. I love that there's a
Yeah.
looseness, but it's not too loose. It's a very
Yeah.
strange middle ground.
And those 2 jump scares you mentioned, yeah, they're powerful. They're really, really good.
Well, it's because you don't know they're coming. Like,
Well,
Lynne Ramsay
that-
does a
and-
great job not setting you up for them at all.
Absolutely. And the editing is impeccable, which is why I wanted to highlight it here as well. Yeah, you don't see them coming at all. I certainly didn't.
No.
But
I
holy
like I
Lord,
said,
are
I
they
almost
effective.
levitated out of the theater.
Yeah. It's really, really, really good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good movie. Really, really good movie. a lot.
As far as Lynne Ramsay, so she's done 5 feature films.
Don't ask me to rank this.
Fine, I won't.
Okay, look.
Okay,
For
well
the
then
sake of the exercise. Okay, again, this is very, very loose, and this might change in 3 minutes from now. I'm going to say You Were Never Really Here, Die My Love, Ratcatcher, Morven Caller, and We Need to Talk to Kevin. But again, all 5 masterpieces.
I admittedly
All
need
great.
to I admittedly need to watch Morven Caller a second time. I was not in the right headspace when I gave that one a go during one of our retrospectives. I think that
Yeah.
was. I was kind of mixed on that movie, and I also need to see. We need to talk about Kevin again. I've only seen that one once, but I think Die My Love might be my favorite.
And it might be mine in
I think
time as
I'm
well.
ready to
Yeah.
say that.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm not quite there yet, but again, I am extremely fresh on this. So give us some time. I mean, it might not take that much time. I don't know. I think all 5 of these films, though, are excellent. I think they're all
Sure.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, she's good at her job.
She's extremely good. Extremely good at her job. And it's not just the fragmented style she brings to her films. Or the artful experimentation, all of that on its own terms, my cup of tea, 100%.
Yeah.
But it's also the performances. Like in every single one of her films, she gives us the best performances of that year. I feel that every single time.
You know what I think is so fascinating though with regard to Lynne Ramsay? I do agree with you about the performances. Pretty much every one of her films, there's some type of brave performance that we need to be talking about. I just think it's so interesting how remember she was tapped to direct that movie with Natalie Portman, Jane Got a Gun?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
Oh, imagine if she actually made that movie.
It would have been a lot better than what it was. I still maintain Gavin O'Connor did his best given the circumstances.
He was
I feel
dealt
like it could have been
a
a
failing
much,
hand.
Oh, big time. And like that film could have been a lot worse than what it was.
It absolutely could have been. Yeah.
Like it's obviously not great, but it's not his fault by any stretch of the imagination. But with Natalie Portman, that I think she would have made a great movie.
Well, maybe Lynne Ramsay needs to make a Western next.
Maybe. I'm gonna be real curious. I hope it doesn't take another decade. There's always like 6, 7, 8 years in between.
Well, selfishly, I'm with you. I hope it doesn't take that long. But if I know that the next film is going to be a masterpiece because it takes that long, then I'll be happy.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay. Like, yeah, I selfishly want more. And I understand that it's selfish on my end.
Well, and I love that she hasn't played the studio game. She's only ever made her films. Like, I God forbid, she's not the kind of filmmaker that, I mean, I always love when filmmakers get work and they can fund their next project. But I don't think I could ever see her making a studio movie or like a franchise movie, if that makes sense. I could never see it. And I'm kind of glad she hasn't.
I wouldn't. For one, I would never want her doing that. Two, I don't think she would ever say yes to that anyway.
Sure.
The only way I would be okay with it is if Disney's like, "Hey, come direct this movie for me, and we'll give you $12 million."
Gosh,
she's like that. That'll fund my next 3 movies. So yes, and in that case, you're making a sacrifice, and a lot of filmmakers obviously do this.
Sure.
They sacrifice within the system to fund their next projects, the stuff they really want to do.
Right.
I don't know if funding is the main reason. Maybe, to your point, she just takes a long time to come to the right story, to tell it the way she wants to. That could be a big part of it. I don't know.
Hey, great filmmakers have to take their time sometimes.
Yeah. And look, that's okay.
Yeah.
And maybe that's her. She's 55, so there's still time. There's still lots of time, hopefully. Fingers crossed. That
don't jinx it,
health-wise,
JD.
she's fine. But in theory, there's time for her to still make a bunch of movies, and I'm deeply excited for that. Wherever she goes, whatever she does next, Disney, give her a lot of money. In fact, give her a lot of money just because you owe everybody at this point, and just give her a bunch of money, and she doesn't have to do anything for you. That's what I vote for.
All right.
At any rate, Die My Love, look, really great. Impossible to recommend as always. With
I don't recommend it to anybody in my life. But I loved it.
But I loved it as well. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, you can leave a comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can hit us up on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can email us in sessionfilm@gmail.com. All right, we do have another review up this week. Frankenstein, Guillermo del Toro. We talk about his new film. You can go and check that one out as well. That was a really fun time. I enjoyed that one as well. And then we are hoping to have another review of Predator Badlands this week as we are recording this. I'm not 100% confident when, but that is in the works, so probably sometime this week. That will be coming out. And then episode 662, I believe, is where we're at, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right.
We are going to be doing our top 5 movies about movies.
I can't believe we haven't done that yet. Richard
Linklater's new film, Nouvelle Vague, coming out this weekend. So you can be on the lookout for that. That's Netflix? Is that coming out on Netflix this weekend?
Good question.
Or is that someone else?
I think that's in theaters, actually. I don't know.
Is that in theaters?
Yeah,
I
maybe.
don't remember. Yeah.
I can't keep track. I can't keep track of these anymore.
Anyway, it's a new Richard Linklater. I'll be excited to talk about that one with you as well. I have already seen it.
Okay.
So I am, and that is Netflix. So I was right on that. So
you were, okay. Good call.
So coming to Netflix soon. I'm not sure when that's coming to Netflix. Maybe it's going to hit theaters this weekend and then Netflix in a couple of weeks.
I mean, I know I already have it at one of my theaters.
Okay. So coming to Netflix soon, but we're going to be talking about that. And that film is all about the making of Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. So that's why we're going to be doing our top 5 movies about movies. and using that film as inspiration.
Absolutely.
So it should be a lot of fun. Be on the lookout for that. With that said, anything else, Brendan? Am I forgetting anything?
I like Lynne Ramsay.
Lynne Ramsay. She is the best. That is the best final thought.
You're welcome.
I hope we get more of her. She is one of my favorites. I
Absolutely.
think that's it. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the In Session Film Podcast.